about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a best-selling author, sex and intimacy educator, as well as a coach. No other than Ms. Xanet Pailet.
Hello, Daniel. Thanks for
Well,
having me.
welcome, Ms. Xanet on Book One Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, I am a sex and intimacy educator and coach. I've been doing this, working in this field for over 15 years. I come from it from a space of having lived in a sexless marriage for over 2 decades. So I have a very good sense and experience of what it's like to be in a
Hmm.
very challenging relationship where you're very sexually shut down. And I bring all of that compassion and all of my knowledge, and I have a vast amount of training. I'm also a certified somatic experiencing trauma practitioner, so I work with a lot of trauma. And I bring all of that into the work that I do, primarily with couples and occasionally with some women, on helping them really learn how to heal from a sexless marriage relationship, or a relationship in which there are just a lot of sexual challenges and intimacy challenges that they're experiencing.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to thank you. I have another podcast called Sex 101. I'm inviting you to be my guest over there, and let's talk about sex under the sun. So today, let's
Love
talk
it.
about
Thank you.
your best-selling book. So tell us, the title frames it is a repair kit. What is the most common break you see in the relationship that people mistakenly try to fix with a better sex life rather than addressing its a root?
My experience with helping couples reconnect after being in a sexless marriage, feeling more like roommates and lovers, is that typically issues around sexuality and not wanting to have sex or not having desire for sex is typically more a symptom of issues that are going on in the relationship itself. So, not feeling emotionally safe, not feeling connected to your partner, feeling like you can't actually share your feelings, feeling like your partner doesn't see you, doesn't understand you, where you're like two ships passing in the night and nobody is actually on the same wavelength. Also, like a very serious lack of attunement, attuning meaning like, you should be two tuning forks that are at the same decibel, right? But in fact, somebody's here, the other person is there. And that, what we're looking for in a really solid relationship is our two nervous systems that are connecting with each other and vibrating at the same level. And that's one of the most common issues and reasons why couples stop having sex. They're mad at each other. There's a lot of resentment. When you're not happy with your partner, you're pissed off at them. You do not want to have sex with them. That just goes for, generally for everyone. So that is one of the main reasons why that happens.
Ms. Zina, you talk about living an orgasmic life. What extend far beyond the bedroom? Can you paint a picture of us? What does an orgasmic day or mindset look like in a practice? Maybe during something mundane like running errands.
Oh, Living an Orgasmic Life, which is the first book that I published in 2018, was really based upon my own story around sexual awakening and sexual healing. But when I thought about the concept of living an orgasmic life, it wasn't just about sexuality, it's also about how you approach the world, how you use all five of your senses to be in contact with the world. So if you're I don't know, if you're running errands, maybe you're being just really present with what you're doing. Maybe you're feeling your feet on the ground. Maybe you're noticing all of the colors around you and the sounds. Living an orgasmic life is around connecting with your body, connecting with your sexual power, connecting with your orgasmic life energy, and bringing that into your whole being and into your whole presence. That's really the concept of living an orgasmic life. How do you see every moment as orgasmic, right? Even the most
Mhm.
mundane moments in the world.
So let's talk about the self healing first. You put heal yourself before awaken your pleasure. Why is it the
Mm-hmm.
sequence non negotiable? What is the sign that someone is trying to skip the healing and go straight to the pleasure?
Well, I think the heal yourself piece is really focused on individuals. I wrote this primarily for women, but I have stories of a lot of women and men in this book, as well as my own journey. And a lot of, men have read this book as well and found it very useful. The concept of healing yourself is for people who are, have experienced trauma, who are sexually shut down, who are disconnected from their body. So you can't actually awaken your pleasure when your body is shut down. It doesn't happen, right? That doesn't mean you might not be able to have sex. You may, depending on how your body, responds to it, but you may not really be experiencing the pleasure that you should be experiencing because you are basically frozen out of your body for a variety of different reasons. Maybe there's trauma and you're dissociating. Maybe you're feeling numb in parts of your body, particularly genitals, again, especially if there's been some sort of traumatic experience that you've had, or you've had, been abused as a child, not just sexually, but physical abuse or emotional abuse. Any type of traumatic experiences typically will shut somebody's body down. And you can't really access your pleasure, because your pleasure happens from inside of your body when those parts of your body are just offline. It just doesn't work very well.
Hmm. So, what's one specific flawed phrase couples often use when discussing intimacy that instantly shuts down conversation? And what is more connective, curious phrase you replace it with?
Mm. Well, I think what I hear a lot is something like, I'm not very turned on by you," or I'm not feeling very attracted or desired by you.
Okay.
I'm just not really attracted to you right now. That is, that's an automatic, like, shut down. That hurts. What happened? What did I do? What did I say? What went wrong? Right? Puts you totally into a very defensive posture, which is not conducive to a good sex life at all. But that's a very common thing, right? And
Yeah.
here's the thing, Daniel. A lot of times nothing is said. And that's the biggest, problem, right? That we just like fade quietly into stopping having sex because there's all of this stuff underneath in the relationship, but nobody says anything. There's been a lot of rejection, and then whoever normally initiates doesn't initiate anymore because they don't want to be rejected again, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's a common pattern that I see. So an alternative to that could be like, hey, um, let's have a conversation about what our intimacy styles are, because we have different intimacy styles, different ways in which individually we like to connect with our partner. And one of the tools that I offer to my clients and to your listeners as well is I've created this intimacy equation quiz, which you can find at this website, howtoimproveMyLoveLife.com. And you take that quiz and you get a sense of what your intimacy equation is. Like, what's the formula that creates intimacy for you? Is it that you want more talking and emotional connection? Is it that you need more physical connection? Is it that you're more like adventuresome and want excitement? And then, I always say, like, it's a hard conversation to start. It is, right? Because you're opening up a Pandora's box and you don't know where it's going to go. But, saying this, like, hey, I took this kind of cool intimacy quiz and I found out that, my intimacy equation is I'm a much more, emotionally focused kind of person. I'm curious what yours is. Do you want to take the test too? It's a safe way to start a conversation that is fraught with a lot of terror for people, right? So
Mhm.
that's one of that's a choice that I think couples can make.
Definitely. It's a choice, people. So, Ms. Zanay, you write about listening to a partner's hunger rather than just their words. What does that look like? How do we tune into unmet need behind a complaint like you're not affectionate enough?
Um, I think we need to have really good communication with our partner and feel like we can express what our wants and needs and desires are without blaming or shaming them. So instead of saying like you're not affectionate enough, I might say like, "Hey, I really loved when we cuddled, last week. It felt really good for me. Is that something that you're open to doing again? Can we do that again? I really like that." Right? So, there's lots of ways to ask for something, and most people ask for it from a negative space. I don't like what you're doing. Do something different, right? As opposed to like, when we did that, it felt really good, or I really like what you just did. Can we have some more of that? So, giving your partner some praise, right? Because you want to be able to get them to appreciate the positive behavior. It's a little bit of behavior conditioning, right? Really
Conditioning.
makes a huge difference. The words that we use, the tone that we use, is the difference between we're going to have fun tonight or we're both going to like sit on the side of the couch watching TV and not talking to each other. I think that's a big piece.
A big piece indeed. So let's talk about the pleasure and awakening. For someone who feels disconnected from their own body pleasure, what is the gentle, non sexual starting point to simply rediscover sensory joy?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways to do it, but one of the pieces, one of the exercises that I like to teach is for people to, for example, work with food because food is very, very sensual. And often, we might eat a piece of chocolate, but we're not really thinking about the taste of the chocolate and the texture of the chocolate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
finding some sort of piece of food that you really like, closing your eyes, making sure there are no distractions, and having an experience of just maybe you sniff it first. If you use, we want to awaken all of the senses, or at least some of the senses. So maybe you sniff it and you smell what that smells like, and then maybe you take a little bit of a taste of it, right? And slowly starting to be more present and focused using your senses to start to experience pleasure in your body, even with the simplest things like eating something that you love, or, if you love touch, putting some oil on your hands and just massaging your arms and your hands, really focusing on the sensation, because a lot of times we're not conscious. So we want to awaken our pleasure slowly through all of the five senses till our body starts to realize, oh, yeah, I can experience pleasure when I touch myself. I can experience pleasure when I hear some kind of music that's maybe a little bit romantic or a little bit sexy, right? So, really starting to awaken all five senses is the beginning of awakening your pleasure.
Miss Zanai, a huge issue is differing libidos. Beyond scheduled, how can a couple refrain desire from something you spontaneously feel something you can collaboratively and willingly cultivate?
That's a great question. So, mismatched libidos is a very common issue that couples definitely experience, and there's a lot of reasons that libidos could be in different places. It could certainly be hormonal. Um, if a woman is going through perimenopause or menopause or postpartum. And it could also be hormonal for men as well. Like we actually know, men's hormones also change as they age. So that is definitely sometimes a piece of it. Another part of it is that, maybe the sex that you're having hasn't just been that good. So if you're having kind of bad sex with your partner, which a lot of people do because they're in
Yeah.
long-term relationships and they're comfortable with like one thing and that's just what they do, and this is especially true for women. We get bored way, way, way easier than I think men in general, and need a continued level of enjoyment and excitement and different things happening. And very often that's why women lose their libido. They're like, well, I could just be like watching Netflix instead of this. It's, not so good. I can just, grab my vibrator. Like, I don't need this, right?
Uh-huh.
So really being aware that, having a really good sex life means really prioritizing sex in your relationship, which means talking about it, communicating about it, and yes, putting it, as I say in my book, in both books, put it on the damn calendar. And I get so
Uh-huh.
much pushback from that. Oh, sex is supposed to be spontaneous, but that's just not the way life is. Like, going out with your friends isn't spontaneous. You put it on the calendar, you make it a priority, right? And that doesn't mean it can't be fun, that you can't sext each other or text each other a couple of days before, that foreplay doesn't start, the minute you get in bed. Rather, it starts, 24 hours in advance, right? So there's lots of ways to make this a very fun, creative, co-created experience rather than feeling like, oh, it's our sex night.
Schedule. Wow, that'd be awesome. That's nice. So, as a best-selling author, a coach, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh God, good question. Well, I think my short-term goal in the moment is, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, Daniel, but to get back on the bestseller list for my
Mm-hmm.
new book, which is coming out on March 3rd, which is the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, which is really based for couples. So that would be a short-term goal. A long-term goal, I think, is just to continue to make sure that my voice gets heard. And, there's other sex coaches out there as well, but that my voice gets heard so that couples understand that being in a sexless marriage, having sexual challenges does not have to be the end of the rope for them. It does not have to end up in divorce. Very often it does. But I know in working with, over hundreds of couples, like who, many of whom are on the verge of divorce, that it doesn't have to be and it can be healed. And I really want people to understand that there are solutions to being lovers, to being roommates rather than lovers. And there are solutions when there are really, where you feel that there are sexual challenges in the relationship and there's a lack of satisfaction.
Good luck to your goals, Ms. and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
I think that my piece of advice I always like to leave everybody with is that pleasure is your birthright, that you are entitled to experience pleasure in your body. You're entitled to experience pleasure with a partner. And if you're not experiencing that, you're missing out on a lot. And you should definitely try to address that issue because it's going to make you a happier, healthier, wealthier person.
Happier, healthier. We love that, Ms. We need to claim that birthright. So, thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Oh, let's see. Oh, no, I wasn't prepared for that. Let me look at my bookshelf and see what Come as You Are. So I love the book Come as You Are. That is a seminal book around women's pleasure. That is really, I think, was one of the first books to talk about women's pleasure from the perspective of understanding the levers of what allows us to put on the brakes and what makes us what puts on the brakes when it comes to pleasure and what allows us to put our pedal on the gas. So I would highly recommend Come as You Are. That was a book that really had a huge impact on me.
Thank you for the recommended book, Ms. Zane. And let's talk about the humble revelation. How do you learn while writing this book that will surprise you and change how you operate your own relationships?
Well, I think all of my work that I've done in the last 15 years, I have much of it has been based upon my own experience, like my own experience of trauma, my own experience of sexual awakening, my own experience of navigating different types of relationships, my own experience of understanding myself better and my like attachment styles better and how that impacts my personal relationships. And certainly in my first book, which is very personal about my partially about my personal healing journey and my marriage. And in my second book, which is personal about the new relationships that I'm in, I really have learned a lot and continue to learn. Like it's an ongoing process and a never-ending journey of my partner and I figuring stuff out and how we trigger each
Yes.
other and how we repair conflict and what it feels like when we're really disconnected at times and how much better it feels like when we came together and what is it that changed that allowed that to happen and how do we have more of that, right? It's an ongoing process of understanding yourself, how you show up in relationship, how you impact another person, and how they impact you.
Yes, indeed. So, Ms. Zanai, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course, my book 101 review in sixth season too, of Food 101 in its sixth season, and they are available wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Zane, our culture is obsessed with orgasms as finish line. How do you help couples practice goal-less intimacy, and what surprising benefits do they discover?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think one of the things that really makes sex challenging for a lot of couples is the feeling like they have to have a goal, and orgasm is usually the goal. And that actually puts a ton of pressure to perform on both the woman and the man or whoever who's in the couple, and not necessarily hetero normative, but it just puts a lot of pressure on everyone. And then when that pressure is there, you're in your head thinking about it, worrying about it, rather than in your body and experiencing pleasure. And so, what I like to tell everyone is that the pleasure is in the journey, not in the destination. So, just experience whatever you're experiencing and don't worry about where it ends up, because the journey itself is where all the richness is and where all the curiosity is and where all the surprises actually occur. You can keep your eye away from the ball in the end goal.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And Miss Janae, tell us is uh if you could have every listener take just one simple actionable step from the book this week, something that requires no partner or less than 10 minutes, what would be and why that one?
Okay. I think the exercise, the tool that is most powerful is the concept of, um, and you can do this by yourself, not with a partner. It's actually a good way to practice. Is touching for your own pleasure. So if you're partnered, then touching for your own pleasure means that you're focused more on your sensation and what's happening in your body when you're actually touching your partner, which creates a much more conscious level of touch because you're focused on your sensation. So, if you will, with consent, and of course, if your partner doesn't like something, they speak up, using your partner's body or hand or arm or whatever part to actually make you feel better, which makes your which puts your attention inward rather than outward, and it creates a lot more presence in your touch. And if you're solo, if you're not partnered, this is a great thing to practice. And I suggest practicing it, like I'm holding up my water bottle, but I suggest practicing it. And in my Living an Orgasmic Life book, this exercise is in both books, they're just different. Practicing it with an inanimate object. And that's really important because, an inanimate object can't give you any feedback whatsoever, unlike an animate object, right? And then you really, really get to experience what's it like to touch something and really feel your own sensation and create even more pleasure in your body, which becomes even more important when you're either touching yourself because you're solo loving yourself, or you're touching another person. So touch for your own pleasure.
Yes, touch your own pleasure, Ms. Xanet. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world through your books. So can you please invite our listeners to support your upcoming book or all your books?
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel. I'm excited. Are we over? We're done.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh.
Please invite them.
Okay. Oh, please invite them. Yes. So you can find out more about my books on my website at passionateintimacyretreats.com. Passionate Intimacy Retreats with an S.com. And you can take the quiz at howtoimprovemylovelife.com.
Yes, people, let's about Miss Xanet Pailet, because if you support her, for sure, more and more orgasmic life will rise. So, Miss Xanet, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Welcome, people. See you soon.